Thank
Of
you,
course,
Emma.
we need to get more detail on your thoughts on the US economy, and we'll do that in our next conversation. But looking at the G20 and what we've heard here, so they left out this pledge to avoid protectionism, this being seen as the US asserting itself on the G20 here. How concerned are you about what that kind of language and conclusion does for the global growth story?
Well, you have to be concerned in the sense that, for one, there is no free trade. No country has free trade. Every country is engaged in protectionism. But if you're going to up the ante in terms of protectionism, then you have to ask questions about supply chains, the cost of goods being sold, the ability to import certain selected goods. It would be probably negative for economic growth globally. Maybe not a major negative, but it's a negative. It also means that there are going to be higher prices on certain goods because there will be some additional barriers put into place. But the real challenge, Emma, is are you going to be able to get certain goods? Are the supply chains going to be not so much more difficult, but are they going to be disrupted? And that is a more significant challenge.
And so from your analysis, from your insight, when you look at what comes from President Donald Trump on Twitter and you look at what comes from the people he's put around him, how concerned should we be then about the global trade story? Because it's easy to get different versions of what America first means and what it means for the global economy.
Well, the segment just before was mentioning about Abe and Merkel talking about fair trade. I think it's fair to say that in the United States, it is not perceived that trade is fair. Now, your idea of fair and my idea of fair could be two ideas that are very different. So I would say that, yes, you would probably see a ratcheting up in terms of some trade restrictions. But the biggest challenge for the United States is its trade relationships with China.
I mean, as Matt was saying, that tapping into what you were saying about just how free is free trade and all these agreements, sometimes they put in barriers as well as removing them, don't they? Does this leave opportunities, though, because obviously China is happy to stand up and look like a big believer in free trade right now, and the Germans are talking that line as well they might. Are there opportunities then for other countries to reduce trade barriers if the United States is doing what it is doing on the trade front at the moment?
Quite honestly, Emma, I think that is the thrust of the policy under Donald Trump, is that we're going to make it tough, but if you open up a little bit, we'll go easy. And I think right now the American public in general is saying, hey, this is not fair trade for us, whatever that means. It's a negotiating position. I think Secretary Mnuchin is in a difficult position because there are other advisors in the White House, such as Navarro, for example, and Lighthouser as a trade representative, who have probably taken a little bit tougher stand with respect to China, particularly. But I think you're right, Emma. I think by taking a difficult negotiating position right up front, it opens up the possibilities that as other countries want to work with the United States, those trade barriers can actually come down, and we would not erect a whole new set of trade barriers.
And there are so many voices, as you say, on trade, so many people to listen to in the U.S. administration on the trade front. What does this do to U.S. assets then, do you think? Where does the dollar head? What are your assumptions around where the dollar heads with all of this conversation around global trade?
In the short run, the dollar still is on the upward movement because the combination of easier fiscal policy, tighter monetary policy, and some sense of restriction on trade is going to promote a stronger dollar going forward. Over time, the dollar, again, is going to find its place in the world trading arrangement.